If you've been in existence for a long time, your website will be on hundreds of directories and all stuff around the internet. Unless the address is exactly the same on every one, you accrue penalties. So if you can get that exactly correct across the internet, your ranking on the Google My Business will be higher. If you have links out to hundreds of directories, the chances are, and it can be as simple as the word, I got it on one of mine, where the word road on lots of directories has been shortened to RD. Now that impacts my rankings. So accuracy on this is the critical thing that the algorithm for Google is looking, because where are they driving it to all the time? They're driving it to a map system. And if they're driving it to a map system, accuracy is the critical thing. And if you I've tested this stuff, if you can get this stuff right across your web and get the addresses, you will move up that pack.
Of how Google views the world. You've got these affinity audiences, that's people shopping for travel in Munich, say. Then they've got audience keywords, which is lookalike similar audiences, people also looking for that stuff. Then they've got in-market audiences, people shopping in your category. And down here they've got remarketing, which is to re-engage the people that have been to your website. So anyway, so I'll finish at this point. You've got to get traffic to your website. You've got to then use that traffic to your website to find other people like them and to remarket to the people you've got so that you can bring them back and close the sale in some way with an offer, or someone buying something online, or someone at least turning up in your business. And if you're going to start to try and analyse this thing, you've got to look at the entire ecosystem and see how all of that is contributing to an outcome, because no one component will sharpen your sales.
Will always be a rule of thumb, but about how much do you recommend people break down their direct budget between Google spend, Facebook spend, remarketing, and those channels, like as a broad guideline?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that once you had a quick, normally we just have a look at the data, and you can look at Google data and Facebook data and go, well, that's what that's the size of that audience there, and because particularly with Facebook, retargeting is really cheap because you're bringing someone back that's already been to your website, so that's really targeted. And you can see in the Facebook data the size of the audience that's available and make some decisions about how much you're going to target. And look, with Google and Facebook, there's only, if you're kind of targeted and thinking carefully about what you do, there's only so much money you can spend. And,
it's quite a lot.
It depends on the category. If you're a travel insurer, oh my God, you can spend anything. But
Millions on that, but what do you maybe get? I mean, who's seen that? Who's seen an OTA bidding for their brand name? A chunk of people. To do your conversion tracking.
Yeah.
And you don't really even set the search terms. So is this just untrackable now anyway? Is it still relevant to make that fight?
Yeah. So Google have got now a bunch of artificial intelligence tools that can theoretically make the bidding budgets, optimize the billing budgets on your behalf. The two things I'd say about that is, one, they generally take human intervention to set it up, and two, that whole ecosystem works best if you're buying millions of keywords or looking at millions of keywords. Like if you're eBay or a travel insurance provider is literally spending $75,000 a day on lots of keywords and lots of search, Google's argument is that they can do a better job than you can, and I'm sure that's true. But if you're at the other end of the spectrum, if you're a small travel provider, I don't know, I think all the evidence I've seen, and I was at Traffic and Conversion in San Diego not that long ago, and there's a couple of people talking about the same thing, and these are people blogging information products online, so they do know everything about what it's costing, and most of them were saying, we're still doing it by hand, because when you get down to our level, works better. Google stuff works much better if you've got tons of data and lots of bidding and lots of things to worry about. For most businesses, they just don't.
Little pockets that work really well for you that not many other people are in, it means you don't get as much of that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's a question for you. Have you tried bidding the keyword things to do in San Francisco for your company?
Yeah, I mean the best keyword.
Yes,
Yeah.
but have you been successful in bidding things to do in San Francisco or TripAdvisor or Biju or someone else? Have you managed to be on the first page?
I don't pay for things to do. That's expensive. SEO, we're very good for things to do and tours and sightseeing. I mean, we've done quite well. San Francisco tours were generally #1, so I'll pay a little bit for that. But things to do is expensive to pay for traffic on that, and because all the others are going to bid for things to do because it's so broad, right? So they got to spend that money, and the easiest way to spend a lot of money is just give it to Google. So they're going to bid up all of our keywords forever.
So if you are small, you need to work with a big OTA. I mean, to get this extra marketing that you cannot pay.
In the Australian market, though, I did an audit of 20. I mean, it's not a complete audit, but I looked at 20 different travel tour operators, and most of them had someone, generally TripAdvisor or one of the other OTAs, bidding on their keywords. But no one was paying a lot for those keywords, because even if you're an OTA with a big budget, the price of the keyword is based on a whole pile of things. So they weren't expensive. I mean, they were under most of the keywords that I looked at were under $1 anyway. So
But to your point, this is where also like segmenting that strategy. So if things to do in San Francisco is too expensive for paid search, you might look at it from an SEO perspective. SEO is probably going to be quite competitive as well. But one of the things we didn't touch on regards to SEO is that content that you're producing can also be really valuable for your social strategy. So you get like 2 bites of the cherry for one amount of work that you do. So if you're producing content, you've always got to balance off how much. Sorry?
And for your email.
And for email as well. So if you're producing that content takes time and resource to produce. You want to eke out as much as you can. So it allows you, if you can use it for email and you can use it for your organic social, and you can use it for SEO, it probably means you can devote a little bit more time and resource to it and produce things that might be niche. So it's not things to do in San Francisco. It's top top food places to see in San Francisco, and go a little bit more niche where you have less competition potentially from an SEO perspective as well. So it's just understanding that market, what you can pay for, what you need to look for from an organic perspective, and treating some of those differently.
actually, Google has a concept called quality score, and quality score drives what you pay for the keyword anyway, because the quality score of a website is how good that website is in terms of its representation of a particular subject or topic. Everything's there, it's all well done, it converts well, people don't bounce off the pages, works well on desktop and mobile, and all of that counts towards what you'll pay for a keyword. So if you were bidding on a keyword and you were doing bicycle tours and you were bidding against TripAdvisor or one of the big OTAs, and your site converted better, you would have a better quality score, and so Google wouldn't expect you to pay as much for the keyword to be at the top of that ranking.
And that's another way to use the content that you're creating,
exactly.
is on your paid landing pages to improve your quality score. So yes, you need to be very focused on having a very short path to purchase from there, but it's also having quality content on that in addition to your conversion actions. Is another way to improve your quality score, which is another, you make one piece of content, email, organic social, SEO pages, paid landing pages as well.
Any question there?
Yeah, one thing that's been missing from this creative so far, but I noticed that especially with a lot of small businesses, that always comes as an afterthought. Yeah, so you've thought about investing in retargeting, display ads, whatever, and then you booked all that, and suddenly, oh yeah, I need some ads for that. So please set aside some time, and because we paid dearly for that,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to display ads on Google. The first 2 or 3 campaigns we did, they're abysmal, really bad. And then we created a better creative, and suddenly it worked. So just
Creative is really about traditional advertising, and I know things have moved on, but there are still some principles. If you went to a traditional advertising agency, they have 2 departments, or there are 2 different agencies, the creative team and the media team. And you can't just focus just on the media, you really need to think about the creative, particularly selling products, experiential products, like everyone in this room is. The other thing that I think is important, back to a point earlier, is understanding where the consumer is in that buying cycle. So, you know, if someone is at that dreaming phase where they're doing their early stages of their research, what's important to them? What's not important to them is, you know, what time it starts, how far away it is from a train station, all of that information. What is important is great imagery and really powerful creative and really engaging content. Likewise, as people move down the funnel, just understanding that the creative that you serve to people, you try and match that, right? So if they're looking for something very specific, or they're almost at the very pointy end of their conversion, that's where they want to know the sort of finer details and the nuts and bolts of the actual experience delivery. But earlier on, you might be looking at something that's a little bit more engaging. So just understanding that in terms of the consumer and where they are on their buying cycle as well.
Just like if you do a good job with your content, you can push it out on email and social and things. We're automating the creation of Facebook and Google remarketing ads from content on websites. So, you know, another thing to think about is if you do a really nice job of the creative, we can then pick that up, munge it into a Facebook or Google ad.
Is that a technical term? Munch?
Yes. Yeah. And make a nice looking ad, and then use that to retarget and remarket people that have already been to that page and things. So that's quite, you know, another way of getting reuse.
I think one thing, there's a lot of different tools, and every platform has a huge amount of customization, like targeting ability, you know, testing ability, and it can be quite overwhelming. I think you can start with really small budgets on both of these channels. You can start with $50 and just think of that as lost money to some extent, just to learn how the platform works and learn what might work for you. So it shouldn't be overwhelming to get started, even if you're just getting started on a very narrow set of keywords or a very narrow audience on Facebook. But yeah, one of them, in addition to looking at good creative, one of the most important things is to just understand the tools that the platforms have. Read. There are infinite number of blogs and websites out there that can sort of teach you this, from the very basics up to really advanced stuff. And just get in there and play around. You know, you're not going to break anything. You might be a little bit inefficient sometimes with the money you spend, but the learnings you'll take are huge.
Actually, that's the other thing I know, because if you're the owner of the business, you're probably overwhelmed by this stuff already, and you've got enough to do just getting your day job done. And so we used to get the retailers of mine to work on 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. So I'd plan everything on a Thursday afternoon and get it ready. I'd have a meeting with the owner of the business and go, what are we going to do? What are we going to move? Where are we going to move the needle for the next 2 weeks? Then we start on a Monday, moving that needle, and then 2 weeks time on a Friday afternoon, I said to these guys, I said, I don't care if you don't have to turn up at any meeting, but you've got to turn up on a Friday afternoon every 2 weeks for no longer than 15 minutes, because then we're going to show you everything we've done that 2 weeks. We're going to give you the numbers, and we're going to get a brief for the next period. And that worked really well, because it took all the pressure off the principals of the business. And every 2 weeks we walked into their office in the afternoon and went, here's what we've got. Good week, bad week, this really worked, that didn't work, what do you want now? And we start on the next 2 weeks. You can cope with it that way, otherwise it's just, oh my God, it's just overwhelming, it's too much. If you think about it, let's say, I mean,
seasonality.
I'll talk about Grand Canyon, same thing, it's very seasonal. There's a kind of, I'll talk about it as shopping and buying. there's shopping time and then there's buying time.
Yeah.
And depending on what it is you've got and the seasonality of it, people, you need to target shoppers at one time of year and then buyers at another. But the thing is, again, if you go back to that first chart where you've got a bunch of people shopping because they're looking in search, and you're only paying really if they click through and come to your website. So in the off season where those numbers are low, well, the numbers are low. And then as the season picks up, you just perhaps allocate a little bit more budget, but you'd keep to the bringing traffic in at the top. You'd add, as the season grew, you'd start to add budget in at the top, so you're getting people into the top of the funnel, coming to your website. And then you can do the same thing with the Facebook and remarketing budgets. You can just wind them up because you can see it. It's so obvious in the data. All of a sudden you go, oh my God,
I
this
think
is long. This is huge.
to understand if they're buying in those 3 months, how much earlier are they starting to
Yeah,
research?
sure.
Because if you don't get, if you're not in their consideration set, and so you don't have some presence, then you're not going to get much during those 3 months, right? So it's important to think, well, if they start buying in this month, and it takes, let's say, and you can see this on just through Google Analytics, they have a number of tools that you can look at, either an attribution funnel and time to conversion, and there's a number of good metrics that you can look at to get a sense for it. And then you should be thinking about what you're doing before that, so that you're doing your initial awareness, and then the remarketing, and then the conversion at that point when you know the
That's
sales.
point. You need to understand more deeply about all the consumer parts.
Yeah, but there are some really simple tools for that.
Yeah,
You don't have to spend a lot of
exactly.
money. Google Analytics is free, and it has some cool views that can help you understand that, both in terms of the number of touch points that they come to your website, how long until they convert. You can get some of that better.
Google is a game changer potentially because God, it makes it easy, and I think the ability for lots of small tour operators to actually take a booking on their website is going to become more and more critical.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that.
it's interesting. What we noticed.
Letting them know that, I don't know, there's flexible cancellation, that all of these other things that give people that confidence to come through your website and convert through your own website.
I think it's